Yeah. Huh. Come on, come on. See. I sit down by the window and stare. The blind is shut, but I don't care.
Luke, regular college lad. Bit of banter, bit of swagger, nothing too dramatic. But comics, that was his thing. Heroes, villains, chaos, power. The kind of worlds where nobody's become legends. He thought it'd be class to live inside one, to stop being the reader and become the main character. Yeah, careful what you wish for. Most days at college felt exactly the same. Same halls, same faces, same noise. But that day, something was off. Tucked away where it shouldn't have been was an old comic Luke had never seen before. Dusty, beat up, wrong somehow. And the strangest part? The bloke on the cover looked a hell of a lot like him. Same face, same grin, same stupid confidence. That should have been the warning, but Luke didn't walk away. He opened it. Luke laughed at first. He thought the comic was messing with him. Just a weird old book. Some creepy artwork. Nothing more. But then the pages started moving on their own. The ink crawled, the panels bent, and that grin in the background, it wasn't printed anymore, it was watching him. Before Luke could drop the book, the whole thing cracked open like a trap. Fire, paper, shadows, teeth, all of it came alive at once. And in one brutal second, he wasn't reading the comic anymore. He was falling into it. That was the moment everything changed. No college, no safe world, no way to close the page. Now Luke wasn't holding the story was holding him. At first, Luke thought he'd hit the jackpot. He wasn't trapped. He was transformed. One second he was just some lad from college. Next, he was charging through nightmare streets like he'd been born for it. Zombies, goblins, monsters. None of it scared him. Not yet. For the first time in his life, Luke felt bigger than the room, stronger than the fear. Like every comic he'd ever loved had finally opened up and said, "Go on then, hero. Prove it." And for a moment, he did. But comics lie. Because the second Luke started enjoying it, the world changed. The panels began to split. The pages tore open. The ink stopped sitting still. It wrapped round him, dragged at his legs, pulled at his chest. And suddenly this wasn't some power fantasy anymore. This was a trap. And the worst part? Luke realized the monsters weren't the real danger. Something else was in the comic with him. Something watching, something smiling. And it had only just started playing with him. The second Luke stopped fighting back, the comic showed its real face. Not a playground, not a power fantasy. A trap. Those ink-black chains weren't just holding him down. They were stripping everything off him piece by piece. The swagger, the strength, the stupid little belief that he was in control. And behind it all, that hooded thing just grinned, like it had been waiting for him the whole time. Because this story was never about making Luke a hero. It wanted fear, it wanted pain, it wanted a victim. Luke lunged for the edge of the page, desperate to tear his way back out, but the comic had already made up its mind. The world around him sealed shut like a trap. Then the thing in the hood stepped forward, grinning like it had been waiting for this moment all along. It didn't just want to beat him. It wanted to break him, to strip away the swagger, the laugh, the act, and show him what was left underneath. And when Luke looked, he saw it. Not a hero, not a winner, just fear, staring back at him. Luke finally saw it then. This comic was never about making him a hero. It was about feeding him just enough power, just enough ego, just enough fantasy to walk himself straight into the trap. The editor didn't rush it. That thing just stood there in the fire-ink dark, grinning like it had all the time in the world, because it did. And then it showed Luke the truth. No ending, no rescue, no last-minute escape, just page after page of pain, fear, and tearing ink over and over again. A prison printed in blood and shadow. A place where monsters never got tired. A place where screams didn't fade out. They just became part of the story. Luke pulled, begged, fought like mad. But the chains only bit deeper, and the more he struggled, the more the comic seemed to close around him. That was the real horror. Not the monsters, not the fire, not even the editor. It was knowing this was meant to last forever. Dragged to his knees, Luke wasn't fighting monsters now. He was fighting the comic itself. Every panel burned, every page pulled harder, and the deeper he sank, the more the world around him stopped feeling drawn and started feeling real. Then the hooded thing leaned in, not shouting, not rushing, just smiling like it had all the time in the world. It told him the worst thing he could hear, that his pain was already part of the story, already written, already inked in. And when the pen touched the page, Luke realized the comic wasn't just trapping him, it was rewriting him. The ink didn't just grab Luke anymore, it got inside him. Every line on the page twisted tighter, pulling at his face, his voice, his head, like the comic was trying to peel the real bloke away and leave something nastier underneath. The digital creator wasn't smashing him. That would have been too easy. He was rewriting him, turning panic into rage, fear into power, and pain into a brand new part for the story. Luke could feel it happening. The heat, the noise, the laughter of every creature in the gutters. Like the whole comic was feeding on him while the editor carved in the final details. And when the page finally settled, one thing became horribly clear. Luke wasn't dead. He'd been changed, not buried, not beaten, just marked. And whatever crawled out of that page next was still Luke enough to remember who he used to be. The comic didn't kill Luke. It did something worse. It spat him back out. He crashed onto the floor choking on smoke, ink, and blood, gasping like he'd just crawled out of a nightmare that still had its hands around his throat. For 1 second, it looked like he'd made it, back in the real world, back in his own skin. But not all of him came back clean. Something had followed him out. Something had stained itself into his flesh and lit up behind his eyes. Then, across the desk, the pages began turning by themselves. A fresh cover slid into view. A new title, a new victim. And this time, the face on the front wasn't Luke's. Thought Captain Jackass was just a comic? Think again. Now you can bring the chaos home with the official Captain Jackass talking doll. Pull the string and hear legendary wisdom like "Bring it on," and I probably meant to do that. Soft, smug, and dangerously full of confidence, he's the hero nobody asked for, but everybody ends up with. Perfect for comic fans, weird collectors, and anyone with questionable taste. Get your Captain Jackass doll now, before it starts talking on its own. Luke should have been finished, broken, buried, written out for good. But some stories don't end when the page says they do, and some idiots are too stubborn to stay dead quiet. Captain Jackass is coming back swinging, so if you want to see what happens next, hit like, subscribe, and stay locked into Frightmare, because this story is far from over.